Guys, okay, we need to talk. Seriously. Wasn't there some speculation that Meghan Markle had, let's just say, yacht girl moments in her past? Yeah, I know, it sounds like gossip, but hear me out, because what's wild is how this story just refuses to die. And now, January 2026, it's back in the spotlight, and not in some sleepy tabloid way. Nope, this time it's Joe Rogan, the man with the biggest podcast in the world, 200 million listeners, unafraid of literally anyone. Royals, Hollywood, billion-dollar corporations, doesn't matter. He digs, he asks, and suddenly Meghan's carefully curated image is under the microscope again. See, the rumor mill has been swirling for years. Yacht parties, elite social circles, Prince Andrew, but mainstream media, they tiptoe, they dodge, they call it unsubstantiated. Joe, he doesn't tiptoe, he doesn't dodge, and when he started connecting dots, Yachts, Marcus Anderson, Soho House networks, Andrew, the reaction was immediate. Lawyers in overdrive, PR teams scrambling, the one thing Meghan thought she'd left behind, suddenly public discussion fodder. And let's be real, Joe Rogan is not someone you can control with a cease and desist. You can't pressure him with palace lawyers, threaten tabloids, or whisper in editorial ears. He has reach, credibility, and the sheer audacity to ask in front of millions the questions that nobody else will. And these aren't accusatory in the traditional sense. They're inquiries, carefully framed, letting his audience draw conclusions. That is the genius and the nightmare all rolled into one. So let's backtrack a little and unpack this, because if you follow the Sussex saga, you already know Marcus Anderson's name. Tall, handsome, connected, the guy who basically introduced Meghan to Harry. Everyone agrees on that fact. But here's where it gets intriguing. What was their relationship before Harry entered the picture? How did Marcus know Meghan was prince material? And if he was facilitating introductions into elite social circles, Andrews, Epstein-era figures, Soho House elites, that potentially reframes her rise in a very different light. Now, Kirby Summers, author of a deep dive into these networks, claims that some photos might exist. Photos of Meghan on yachts in Thailand with Prince Andrew way back in the early 2000s. Supposedly, media outlets may have them, but they've never been published. If true, that's, well, explosive. Not just gossip, but a potential link to networks Meghan's public persona has carefully sidestepped. Joe's pointing out the obvious question. If the photos exist, why has nobody investigated or reported? And the silence is deafening. Meanwhile, Soho House adds another layer. The club isn't just about hanging out with rich people. It's private, secretive, designed to create networks. Marcus Anderson's role? Facilitator, gatekeeper, connector. And when Joe asks what kind of introductions were happening there, who was meeting whom, and what doors were being opened, well, that's exactly the kind of story the mainstream avoids, because answer it honestly and you expose decades of elite networking. Answer it vaguely, and the speculation grows. Either way, Meghan's origin story, the struggling actress meets prince fairy tale, starts to look less like a romantic serendipity and more like calculated social maneuvering. Here's where it gets tense, the Yacht Week rumors. Documented invitations from Croatia, 2016. GQ called it Sodom and Gomorrah at sea, a hedonistic playground for the ultra-wealthy. Did Meghan attend? Nobody knows, but the connection exists, and Joe's been hammering at it. Tabloids dismiss it as gossip. Royal authors speculate. Joe broadcasts it to 200 million listeners, framing the narrative in a way that feels credible, because he's not just reading press releases, he's dissecting networks, timelines, relationships, and that's terrifying for anyone whose past they've carefully curated. And let's not forget Harry. Poor Harry, the prince who, in public imagination, was swept off his feet. But what if the story changes? What if the romance looks less like love at first sight and more like the culmination of strategic introductions? The questions Joe raises, Marcus's influence, yacht events, Soho House connections, cast shadows on the fairy tale.
and Harry can't really respond without evidence he doesn't have. He's stuck in the narrative, a pawn in the larger social chessboard that Meghan allegedly navigated long before Harry entered her life. Meanwhile, Meghan's public team is panicking. Netflix shows like With Love, Meghan are launching, yet the reaction is lukewarm. Legal threats and PR spin can't touch Joe. The more they try to silence, the bigger the story grows. Silence is interpreted as guilt. Response gives oxygen. They're trapped. And that's Joe's brilliance. He isn't a tabloid journalist. He's a relentless connector of dots, a platform amplifier, someone who can bring rumors into mainstream consciousness without ever claiming them as fact. Think about this. Every detail Joe raises, Yacht Week invitations, Soho House networking, Marcus Anderson introductions, potential early Andrew connections, forces an audience to ask, how did Meghan's rise happen? How strategic was it? And when speculation meets 200 million ears, suddenly the narrative Meghan controlled for years starts to crumble. Let's add nuance. Not everything is verified. Photos may or may not exist. Attendance at yacht parties is speculative. But the storytelling angle is devastating. The mere suggestion of these connections, aired publicly on a platform nobody can control, reshapes perception. And perception in celebrity and royalty is everything. Joe's line of questioning is methodical. He asks, why these events? Why Marcus Anderson? How did Meghan afford exclusive lifestyles? What was happening behind closed doors in private clubs? And crucially, why isn't mainstream media digging? Each question is like a chess move. Meghan can't counter without confirming, denying without amplifying, remaining silent without implying guilt. She is in essence trapped by her own past and the reach of modern media power. And let's be honest, the spectacle is intoxicating. Rumor becomes headline. Headline becomes narrative. Narrative becomes cultural conversation. Joe's audience isn't just passive. They're engaging, commenting, debating. They're drawing connections themselves. And that is more dangerous than any direct accusation. People convince themselves, and that self-conviction is sticky. That's why Meghan Markle watching Joe Rogan dissect yacht girl theories, Marcus Anderson connections, Soho House introductions. She can feel her image slipping through her fingers in real time. Meanwhile, the world is watching. International royal watchers, scandal enthusiasts, casual gossip readers, they're all in. And here's the kicker. Joe isn't just entertaining, he's forcing questions that mainstream outlets avoid. Questions like, why does Meghan get a pass? How much did networking play a role in her ascent? Could her meeting Harry have been influenced by social introductions, years in the making? And most explosively, if there are photos or evidence lurking unseen, why are they suppressed? It's a slow reveal, cinematic in scope. We're not watching a tabloid exposé, we're witnessing a mystery unfold in real time. Layers of speculation, strategic silence, and public reaction collide in a way that feels almost unavoidable. And the tension? Palpable. Meghan's team can't respond, Harry can't clarify, the tabloids can't assert control. The story moves forward anyway, driven by audience curiosity, podcast reach, and the genius of asking the right questions out loud. So here we are, rumors of yachts, elite networking, possible early Andrew connections, and a public figure whose life has been scrutinized, mythologized, and in many ways controlled. Now the narrative spins in new directions, fueled by speculation framed as inquiry, spread to hundreds of millions of listeners, and impossible to suppress. The story of Meghan Markle, the yacht girl who landed a prince, exists in public consciousness now more than ever. And Joe Rogan? He just handed the world a lens to look through. No filters, no PR spin, just questions. And when the audience starts asking questions themselves, well, that's when legend, rumor, and reality blur together in the most cinematic way possible. So, buckle up, guys. Subscribe, like, comment, and let me know your thoughts. What's your take on the yacht girl speculation? Do you think it's strategic networking, pure coincidence, or something in between? I'll be watching the next twist with you. And as always, thank you for sticking with me through the chaos, the intrigue, and the mystery. It's a wild world out there, but hey, at least we get to dissect it together.